Every high-level athlete I've been around had talent, but the ones who lasted, the ones who separated themselves had something else. They had discipline, they had emotional stability, they had presence, and they had the right voices around them shaping how they responded to adversity. Talent gets you noticed, but character keeps you in the room. Today's guest understands that at the highest level. Vernon Kearney is a former NFL defensive back who spent time with the Buffalo Bills, Cleveland Browns, and Kansas City Chiefs after playing collegiately at Lane College. Now he's the founder of the Peak Performance Outreach and Youth Performance and Character Development Program that builds speed, strength, and athletic ability. But more importantly, it builds discipline, emotional regulation, respect, and mental toughness in young athletes. And this isn't just theory by me. My son's trained with Coach Vern. I've seen firsthand how he interacts without coddling, how he demands presence without breaking a relationship, and how he builds confidence through controlled intensity. This conversation isn't just about athletic development. It's about what actually creates long-term success. Coach Vern, welcome to the Think Leap podcast.
Welcome, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me, bro.
Oh, I appreciate you being on. This is going to be fun. I feel like I'm talking to a buddy of mine. So this is going to be pretty cool.
No doubt.
So let's kick this off. Let's start. If you could, just very broadly, tell us about your journey, right? Your playing journey, growing up, everything in between, how the outreach program started. So I'll turn it over to you and you can give the listeners some background on yourself.
Yeah, no doubt. Like I say, thanks for having me, bro. A little bit about myself. I'm from Sarasota, Florida. I went to Riverview High School. In high school, I was a dual sport athlete. I actually started running track my junior year. And when I started running track, that kind of showed me more of my skill set as far as speed and how I could separate myself amongst the pack. And track actually helped me a lot with football as far as, taking that confidence on the field once I knew what I was able to do with track and field. And then I moved on to college. I went to Lane College University up in Jackson, Tennessee, Division II HBCU. Coming out of high school, though, backtracking a little bit, I didn't have the grades coming out of high school. I was supposed to go D1, I have shoe boxes full of letters of places where I could have went, but, you got to be accountable, and I didn't have the grades. And that actually led to a lot of the reason behind I work with youth today is because I know how it feels to not sign on signing day. I know how it feels to feel left behind amongst your peers because you didn't do what you needed to do. So I felt like going to Lane College was a challenge for me. I was able to prove to myself that I belonged. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew I would get there if I met the right coaches and I was prepared. And that's pretty much what happened at Lane. I was fortunate enough to be coached by a first-round draft pick by the name of Derrick Burrows. He played for the Buffalo Bills, back when they went to all those Super Bowls. And, it was a great experience. A lot of the way that I coach now kind of came from him. A lot of the way that he ran his program, discipline, order, and structure, real old school, firm but fair. And that's how I like to, say that I am, firm but fair with my athletes, regardless of the age. After Lane College, I was able to, I played in a couple All-Star games after dominating my conference when I was in college. I went to the Raycom All-Star game, and I was able to play in the Texas versus the Nation All-Star game with all the talent that kind of separated from me in high school. So I was able to meet some guys that I knew from high-level schools, Notre Dame, Texas, Oklahoma, et cetera, in the All-Star game, kind of to prove that I belong. And got invited to a couple camps coming out. The Buffalo Bills picked me up. I was with them for mini camp. Didn't quite work out in that system, so Kansas City came and took me. And I stayed there for a couple years. And then after that, I was fortunate enough to play CFL football. I did the CFL for a year and some change. And that was a great experience. Playing for all those teams, Kansas City to be exact, I learned a lot of lessons from Andy Reid as far as, same thing, discipline, order, and structure, and how you should carry yourself as a pro. Being around all those guys was a great experience too. And, who you have in your locker room really matters. And who you look up to and who you surround yourself with can play a very important part in your success or failure, on and off the field. So that's a quick little synopsis on my background. All of that stuff led to peak performance. As of right now, I'm a teacher and I'm a coach. Like he said, peak performance outreach is what I do after school, during school. I'm an EBD teacher. I teach at Southeast High School, emotional behavior development. So, still teaching character building and leadership in all these areas. I also volunteer my time at teen court. I deal with a lot of, juvenile delinquents and kids that are at youth. I'm sorry, that are at risk. At risk doesn't always mean that they're homeless and things of that nature. Just, making better decisions. Trying to teach them about the importance of working hard and being around the right people and being responsible and, holding yourself accountable. So I kind of just wanted to take all the lessons that I took from sports and put it into a youth outreach program that can help. I'm just trying to shine my light in the area that I'm in. So
That's amazing. No, that's really cool. That's really cool. It's awesome that you're able to take bits and pieces of what you learned throughout your career, both personally and professionally, to now put it to use for, the younger generation, or whether they're athletes or students that need that mentorship,
yes.
so that you can. And I'm sure all of them, look up to you, just because of your background and everything that you do for them. I am very interested in talking more about the idea of a mentor. And I think what I'd like to do is maybe just provide the audience a little bit of a background of maybe how you and I came to be. And it's really, quite frankly, through me identifying the opportunity to have my son work with you, as his mentor. When I was growing up in the baseball world, I was very, very fortunate to have two mentors to this day that I believe there's no way I would have gotten as far as I've gotten baseball had they not been in my life. Literally, to be able to just have conversations that I was able to have with them, work out with them in their off seasons while they're playing in the major leagues, they're taking me under their wing.
Wow.
Also being in, when I was younger, when I was in seventh grade, being able to work out with baseball players that were 3 to 5 years older than me. So they were in high school, playing on the varsity team, and me being a seventh grade kid, it really kind of shows you what you're aspiring to be. And they're going to help you, they're going to kind of show you how to do it. So to speak. But in the situation, to bring this back to my son, we were at a speed and agility workout for his 8-year-old football team. And I was able to just observe the way that you interacted with them, your professionalism, how you approached your training session, but then more importantly, maybe not more importantly, but maybe just as importantly, how he responded to your guidance and your direction. And to me, I remember coming up to you after the workout and approaching you and saying, Hey, coach, do you do one-on-one sessions ever? And really that was probably 9 months ago now.
About 9 months.
We've been working together for that long, and I can see the development in him, not only athletically, but socially and emotionally, because of the work that you've done and how you tie in, athletic training and movement with social skills and emotional development. Can you talk a little bit about when you're designing a workout or a program for, a client or an athlete that you work with? How do you incorporate all of those things based upon whatever that athlete needs?
Yeah, well, I feel like the main thing is being patient. A lot of people aren't as patient as what I've observed. Even with working with kids, you have to be real patient. And I have to take something that might be complicated, and I wouldn't even call it dumb it down. It's more so give it to them in the perspective that they can understand. When I'm working with kids, I like to ask questions. It's going to be, I'm not going to be the only one talking. I like for them to communicate too, because the more that they communicate to me, I learn how they want to be coached. So I find out, I ask questions about, what's their favorite cartoon, or what's their favorite, superhero, things like that. Then I incorporate that into the workout when I'm trying to motivate them to do a certain technique or whatever it may be. And then I also like to get out there and show them, when I can show them and they watch and they see that I'm doing these movements, because I was a visual and a hands-on learner. It's different ways of learning. And when you're working with kids, learning how to incorporate all those things to where everybody gets it, not just a couple kids get it. And, I really appreciate the parents that understand and respect my process. Because at the same time, my process isn't for everybody. Some people, I'm really old school. I'm young. I'm 37, but I'm really kind of old school in my ways, and I feel like it all boils back down to hard work. And if he has to learn to trust the process, trust the baby steps. We can't catwalk the bike until we know how to ride on training wheels first. And then when you prove to me that we can ride on training wheels, I take them off, and then we keep compounding good days until just after a while, the cake is fully baked and they get it. So,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You know, speaking about the how you work with the parents, for me, what I do, and this is something I just started doing, to be honest with you.
mhm,
I will literally stay in my car or stay away
mhm,
from the session that you're having with my son, because
mhm,
that is very important time for him and you to be interacting, right?
mhm,
Part of the reason that we ultimately made the decision to work with you was because we looked at it like, okay, he's not responding to our coaching, his mom and dad's coaching,
mhm,
but he's really responding to you. So we said, hey, let's stay out of it. Let's stay away
mhm,
and let him just work with you, and you kind of take it
mhm.
and run from there. And then
Right.
you're obviously developing the comfort and relationship with him too.
Mhm. Yeah, I can speak to that as well, and I wanna
Yep.
once again compliment you and your wife for, let's just call it what it is. It's tough if you're a helicopter parent,
Oh
so to
yeah.
say. If you're hovering over, the kid never learns to in a way, respect that coach fully, because they'll be looking for reassurance from their parent on, should I do this or should I not do this? Having the parent trust in the trainer's methods and the way that they handle your kid and how, the session is going, being able to have that discernment is another thing, because all parents aren't like that. So it takes, and another thing is I look at it as, I can take that off the parent's plate, as far as you don't have to, because if you're training them and the session doesn't go as well, we carry that back into the home. More so, we can leave it on the field, however the day went with Coach Vern. And then you can continue to be dad and hold him accountable in other ways. And, even though that you and your wife are professionals as well, and you can teach them some of these drills, I feel like that is wisdom for you guys to delegate, so to say, that responsibility to somebody that you trust. So,
Mhm.
it takes a village, and I know what my role is. I love to train and develop. I'm not trying to take anybody else's place, but I do love getting them ready for whatever sport or activity they have to go do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess if you could, maybe for the folks that are going to be listening to this, can you kind of go through what
Yeah,
a 45-minute workout looks like
right.
that you would have
Sure.
with my son, with Cal?
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. First things first, we warm up. We'll do about a 15 or whatever minute warm up. Let's use a day as far as when we go to the hill. They jog a lap when they get out of the car to get their mind right. Start priming themselves for the focus. And I let them know I need 45 minutes of focus, because the rest of them are going to be spent on stretching before they leave. So they know they have to lock in. They hear me say stuff like that all the time, like lock in. Even when we're tired, lock in. Think about the technique. Think about the stuff that we've been working on, and let's put it all together. We do a dynamic warm up after the warm up, which are different variations of stretches. We kind of just priming. all their muscles to get ready to start doing the movements. We spend some time on that. After that, we move into the groundwork, hip mobility and things of that nature. Um, After we're done with the groundwork, we do our knee drive. We start working more so going up. So I work on their arm pump, making sure that their form is good with how they run, going over running mechanics. And then after that, we move into our agility drills. I might have a speed ladder out. I have different types of cones set up. Since Cal is an offense and a defensive player, we have sessions of doing offensive work and then defensive work. And then after that, after we're done with the agility drills, we get into the position specific drills. So we might be working at receiver towards the end, or if he's playing corner that week, we'll work on some defensive back stuff. And then we finish it. The end of practice is very also just as important, because now this is more so geared towards just straight grit and pushing through. We run gassers. I have them run all the way down, back pedal down. Sometimes I make them hold a plank. If his brother is out, I incorporate both of them to make them push each other. While one of them is running down, the other one's holding the plank until he gets back. So it turns into some type of teamwork activity. I got to hold the line until my brother gets back, and vice versa. And it's really good to see them push each other. We've even had sessions where, it gets real tough. And even if he cries, he doesn't cry to quit. He cries to keep going. And so getting them to understand that that's going to be needed in life. This is bigger. Once again, this is bigger than just sports in my mind. I know the jungle that they're going to be going into later on down the road. When Coach Vern is not around, you're going to be able to fall back on some of these sessions and be like, hey, I've already pushed through some things. So what I'm going through in life now, is I'm already prepared.
Yep.
And that's all I'm trying to show them.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting because literally this week you said something to me that I had never thought about before. I had never thought about what you said in this way before. So as a parent of a child who's neurodivergent but really struggles controlling his emotions when things become hard or there's failure, he would cry, right? He would cry, or he would maybe shut down for a certain amount of time. And you created a scenario in one of the workouts this past week, and verbally what you said was, it's okay to cry, but you got to keep going.
Yes.
You can't shut down. You can't stop. You got to keep going. And for me as the parent, the parent having this athletic background, probably having an ego, it's like, okay, my kid's really good, but boom, the second something negative happens, it's emotional. It's an emotional outburst, or it's
Right.
negativity. And so, then as a parent, you're kind of like embarrassed. You're waiting for, something, is he going to come back into play? Is he going to take himself out of the game? Is the coach going to not give him another chance? But the way you said that, put it in the perspective of me, it's like, wait a second, he's an emotional kid. He can show emotion as long as he keeps going. So can you talk about kind of that,
Oh yeah.
how that came to be with him, and go through that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, when that situation happened, I don't care if they cry for the whole 45 minutes, as long as we get the work done. Because, productivity is what they're going to be judged off. And after a while, he'll just start thinking about it. Like, why am I wasting energy on crying? I still did it. I actually ran a better time once I got over it. The same thing with throwing up. I tell my athletes when they throw up, that's weakness leaving the body. Like, it's okay to throw up. Don't feel bad because you threw up. Just hop back in. And when they finish the workout, we're just building grit, grit, tenacity, all these different words. You learn that in an hour. That's going back to saying my sessions aren't really probably for everybody.
Yeah.
If they don't understand that that's part of the process, it's very redundant. My drills, I'm trying to develop fundamentals. I'm not trying to impress people. I know that that'll happen later on down the road if we can just do these fundamentals, mastering the fundamentals, and then we see them start to separate and escalate in their careers moving forward. So I like when moments like that happen because it's a great coaching moment. And, we're running that hill. Like I told him and the other son, Lucas, I said, today's a character building day. This hill doesn't care about how you feel. We're tired at set 5. We got 5 more. So you got to walk down there. You got a minute break and you got to figure it out. And
Mm-hmm.
that forces them, I think, it makes them come up with their own method of getting over it.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
they know when that whistle blows or when I say 10 seconds, it's go time. And I feel like that's just going to help them in so many different, that's like a tree with branches. It's going to help them in so many different areas that have nothing to do with sports.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So, and for context, you work with very high level football
yes, sir.
players as well. So,
Mhm.
you're working with players that are literally getting ready and training for the NFL Combine currently too.
Yes.
So, my sons are the very low age group, and obviously
Mhm.
you're working with very experienced athletes too. So, I want to make sure
Yeah.
people understand that too.
Oh, yeah.
Now, and so in saying that, I would be curious if you could, give some sort of, I don't know, advice or offer something to the parents that might be hearing this. In your opinion, with all of the athletes you've worked with, played
Mhm.
with, been yourself, what differentiates the elite
Mhm.
from the great to the just okay?
Oh, yeah. Uh, Most definitely. Some of the best players I've been around, one thing they all had in common was they were coachable.
Mm-hmm.
Coachable. They lock in when the coach is talking. Um, they do the extra work. They do a little bit more. They're willing and having that mindset of being willing to do a little bit more. Staying after, getting there early, working on the stuff that we go over throughout the week. Because like I tell them, I see some of my clients once a week. If you're thinking that you're going to be great with seeing me once a week, and you're not implementing on your own the stuff that I'm teaching you, then we're only talking about being successful. I'm not really going to listen to a lot of talking. I like to see what people actually do. Are you going to show and prove? And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like this because I know, once again, I know they say they want a scholarship. So when you get into these environments, it's not about emotion. These is now we're in a setting where people's jobs are on the line and they're going to need you to produce. So if my athletes can go into a facility or an organization and they become the athletes that the coaches don't have to worry about because they understand, you want to be one of those players where the coaches say, he gets it or she gets it. They know they don't have to hover over you because, you're locked in, you're on time, you're responsible. They don't have to worry about you on the field, in the weight room, recovering,
Mm-hmm.
all these things. And so to get them at a young age, like Kyle, is very beneficial because they're like a blank canvas. I don't have to reteach bad habits. I have to, sometimes when you get athletes a little later on down the road, they have to unlearn everything that they've learned, and then you have to start over again. So, having an athlete from a young age is very beneficial, and you can really monitor and watch and track the growth.
Yeah.
So, and like you mentioned earlier, I have a guy right now, Mac Harris, who's coming out South Florida, middle linebacker, All-American, and preparing him for his pro day. You know, even at those levels, it's you never know everything. And even those guys are very appreciative of learning little nuances on how to get better or different techniques, different perspectives, different ways of doing things. I majored in biology, so and I love animals too. So I love training my dog. Not to call human beings dogs, but we're all mammals. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the same type of thing. The same level of patience that I have to have with training and getting my Doberman to be respectful and understandable and listen to certain things. I have to take that same energy into training children and elite athletes as well.
Yep.
So,
So you mentioned the word that coachability, right? And I think about this word a lot, and I think about it a lot because I try to put myself in the shoes of a coach who's coaching my kids, and a lot of the audience that listens to this conversation is parents of kids that are ADHD, or maybe they have level 1 autism, or other stages of autism, or other
Mhm.
neurodivergent issues. And sometimes I think when I think about coachability, right, it's exactly what you said. It's listening, being able to hold eye contact, working hard, showing up early,
Mhm.
not needing to be told what to do, taking initiative and doing it on my own because I
Mhm.
know it's going to make me better and my team better.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's not as easy. I'm just going to use Calvin as an example.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not as easy for him to do that yet, for
Mhm.
2 reasons. One, he's young, he's only 9, and 2, the way his mind and his brain works. So, for people that don't know him, right, like maybe when you first started working with him 9 months ago,
Mhm.
it may have taken you a couple months, a few sessions,
Mhm.
conversations with me and my wife to
Mhm.
fully get the picture of what he was from a
Mhm.
mental perspective.
Yep.
Um, but anyway, that doesn't change his wanting to be coached. It just changes how the coach needs to communicate and get the most out of him.
Right.
Do you have like how do you kind
Yeah.
of, go about that? Because I'm sure he's not the only one that you work with
Oh,
that's like,
yeah. Nah,
oh,
no
yeah.
doubt. Well, other than the speed and agility sessions we had when we first met, another major aspect of our relationship came from we did mental sessions.
Yep.
And once again, compliments to you all as parents with seeing the importance and wanting to do that. Everything wasn't physical. The mental sessions we had at the library when we would meet were very impactful. I felt like, I'm the type of coach, I wanted to know, what is his teacher saying? What is, give me, I don't play anymore, but give me the scouting report on your kid. What are the problems you all are having? What is the teacher saying? Anybody else that he's working with, what is going on? That way I can put all that together, come up with my own, method or plan of attack on how to work with him on his weaknesses. And I want to know about their weaknesses. I'm gonna see the things that they're good at just through interacting with them. And then when me and Kyle had our own conversations, he's a chess player. He likes to play chess, and that I like to play chess. We would play chess, and then I would put him on the computer. I let him play the computer as well, and then I started seeing different things that would come out in situations where he had to become competitive. Things that you would tell me, okay, this is when he kind of gets upset with this. And one major thing that I'm still teaching him today, and he's working on it, getting better at it, is you got to learn how to lose. You know, it's good to win, but you're going to take more L's than W's in life. So learning how to lose and still being a team sport, still being you can still be competitive. Understand I need to go back to the drawing board, see where I messed up, and come back and do it again. Not just giving up or not getting upset because things didn't go your way. So allowing him to do things that he likes to do. And that's another thing I would tell parents, don't force what you want to do onto your kid. Throw everything at the wall until you see what sticks for them. Forcing a kid to play football when they really like soccer, it, there's nothing I'm going to be able to help you with if they don't like to do that. You know what I mean? Because they're gonna have that energy on them during the session. And I'm the type of coach, if I know that a kid really doesn't want to do something, I've given parents their money back
Hmm.
because the kid might not be ready yet. It's all about development for me. I don't want to just take your money if I don't think that this is going to be something that's benefiting both of us. It has to be a win-win for both parties. So I would tell parents, be open-minded to putting your kids in different things, and just because they have a disability, I was told I had a disability, but my mom, that she didn't slow down. She put me in all types of different things, and when that kid finds something that they like to do, they're willing to go through the process of winning and losing in order to become great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just about finding that right environment. And once it sticks, all the confidence comes with it, the
Right.
social interactions and the friendships come with it. Um, you know, it, when when you and I started talking and the concept of going to the library with him came up, I was full on like, yeah, let's go. At the time we were just wrapping up let's call it more formal behavior therapy.
Mhm.
And it was great. And that all worked out very well.
Mhm.
But when I was able to take the aspect of you're talking in the you're talking in the library. He's obviously with a mentor that he admires and respects.
Mhm.
You already have a relationship with him on the physical side, and you're pushing him
Mhm.
physically with the speed and agility in the workouts.
Mhm.
So there's that aspect, but now we're tying it into challenging the brain and talking through different scenarios and learning how to lose through chess and other
Mhm.
activities that you guys
Mhm.
would do or still do in the library. That was what said, yeah, we have to do this because
Mhm.
he's it's not only is it's a different type of exercise for him. It's a different type of
Mhm.
therapy, for lack of a better word, for him, but it's also very interactive and it's it's not just like you're talking at him and he's talking
Mhm.
back to you. You're actually doing an activity and
Mhm.
he's thinking and then able to communicate with you. I mean, you guys would literally go through the playbook
Mhm.
that he remembers,
Mhm.
the 16 plays or whatever they had. You would literally
Mhm.
go through those plays and scenarios while playing chess.
Mhm.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
that was like also preparing him for the game that he had like the next morning.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Doing those sessions before his games will really prime him. Once again, I'm taking my past life and incorporating that into how I train and develop these kids. When you get to these levels, whether it's high school all the way up into the pros, most of the time there's a mental aspect where they're watching film on the opponent. They're looking for different tendencies, different weaknesses, and then they're going to go outside and implement the game plan. So
mhm.
being able to have the mental with him and also do the physical, and then we get to see the finished product in the game, that's the whole cycle. That's the whole cycle. And I feel like it's that type of development that more coaches just got to want to do that part. We can't. I'm only giving you 50% if I only do the physical. I have to get something mental because then I'm going to learn more about you. This is why teams interview players. You can be an amazing athlete, but you still want to pass these interviews. They're going to ask you these questions. They want to know how you think. It's like no one just buys a car just off looks. They got to pop the hood and see what's going on under there, and that'll better help me as the trainer or the coach, whichever one I need to be at the moment, uh, give a diagnostic, just like taking your car to get looked at. Here we go. This is what's going on. And that really worked with me and Kyle. Um, and he knows that I'm gonna be honest. When he would have a bad game, I would also, you grade yourself. You give yourself a grade. How do you feel like you played? And even with him telling me off his observation what he gives himself, he never would tell me all the time, "Oh, I give myself an A," because I'm looking to see if he's going to do that. But it would be honest, yeah, C plus or B or A, no A plus, just regular A, and then we would go down why. Why did you give yourself that? And I just feel like it helps.
Yeah, and even more than that, we would have daily and weekly goals in regards to
Oh yeah.
his, diet,
Hmm.
hydration, what he was doing when you weren't around. And I think
Hmm.
that's another aspect too is, you know, it's and you said it a couple of minutes ago. Every athlete that plays at a high level is physically good, right? They're
Hmm.
fast, they're strong, they have good hand coordination, whatever.
Hmm.
But it's that mental aspect, in my opinion, the
Hmm.
ability to have that mental grit, perseverance, overcome
Hmm.
adversity, watch the extra film so that you're more prepared going
Hmm.
into the game than the other player than your teammate is, your opponent is.
Yeah.
Those are the things that gets you to that next level, right? Because everyone always has these goals. I want to get to the next level. I want to get to the next level. But are you really going to do what it takes to get there? And
Right.
those are the things that it's not just when you're working with him 2 days a week.
Hmm.
It's what is he doing, or not just him, but what are they
Hmm.
doing the other, 4 or 5
Mhm.
days to be to mentally be prepared for whatever their next, practice or game or whatever it may be is.
Right.
So that's the difference in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree most definitely. Like I would always say, especially in the beginning, I would know if he was working on the stuff that I talked to him about due to his level of fluentness on the next session. If I don't want to keep talking about not crossing your body with your arm swing, keeping everything here. I would know if he's practicing because I probably either won't have to say it or I'm going to say it fewer amount of times than I did the last time we met up.
Mhm.
So I love when I see my players, or even with their conditioning level. Yeah, I know you're not putting in some extra work at home if you're still getting gassed after the warm up.
Yep.
I'm monitoring when throughout the workout, throughout this hour, throughout this 45-minute session of intense work, when do they start to break down? If we're running hills, if I say today we got 10, all right, you start to break down at 4 last time. Okay, where's that conditioning at today? Are you conditioned? Okay, he started getting tired at 7. That means we're working. And I appreciate when the parents understand that because it's a group effort.
Yep.
It's not they do have homework when they leave,
Mhm.
and that carries over to even them having that same thought process in school. It's like, okay, I get it. What's the system? Okay, what's the mission? This is how I need to execute on it.
Absolutely. So let's think about this for a second. There's people that are listening to this that don't have the athletic background that we have.
Hmm.
They don't have somebody like you in their family's lives to be able to work with their kid,
Hmm.
or the coach of their kids' teams are not like you. And they're not thinking the way you do. Obviously you have a lot of experience, so you can, but I want to basically ask a very broad question here, and kind of those three, demographics.
Hmm.
You know, for the parents that don't have, somebody like you in their lives,
Hmm.
what can they do themselves for their kids or for their athlete to, get these developmental
Yeah.
processes
Yeah.
going?
Yeah. Well, I feel like first things first is, tapping into this podcast. Shouts out to you helping with the movement on that. Without knowledge, we perish, right? So, getting more information on what the problem is that they feel like they're having, whether it's they don't know where to go. If you don't know where to go, start researching different ideas. If you want to put them in football, if you want to put them in track, and then just because you search it up doesn't mean you have to commit that day. Go and check it out with your kid, with your child. Go and sit down and watch a practice. Go and look at how they interact with the kids. Ask the coaches questions, see where their heads are. See what their level or background is from, because it all of those things do matter. Um, who's training and working with your child matters the most, actually, because they're going to be passing on those habits and those ways of thinking to your child. So, yeah, don't be scared to reach out to people, and don't be scared to actually go in there and meet people and ask questions, just because you're interviewing them. This is, you have to interview them, just treat it just like you would a job.
Yeah, I think one of the from a coach's perspective,
Hmm.
you know, obviously you're working one on one in this scenario, right? And you work
Hmm.
with different groups of kids, large groups
Hmm.
as well. But for the coach that, maybe has 12 to 20 players on his or her team,
Hmm.
what would you say they could take from this to, really get the most out of
Each
an
player.
individual player?
Yeah. Yeah. I would tell them, build a relationship. Actually get to know each kid. I don't care if you got to go on ChatGPT and think about, 5 different questions to ask each kid. and then keep a record. When the kids see you take the extra time out to ask them those types of questions, you can do it even during the sessions, or sit down with the parents, have a consultation. I'm willing to go those types of miles. And when my students whether it's my students at school or my athletes, I'm not scared to end up in their living room. I'm not scared to call a meeting with their parents and ask those types of questions. When my athletes and students know that I'm pulling grades, it's like, okay, he cares. Oh, okay, he even if they have an IEP, understanding what their IEP is, actually going over that. I understand the importance of that too, because I want to help everybody out. I want to help the parents out. I want to help the teachers out. How can we get behaviors down and productivity up? But that's going to take a collective effort, and the coaches and teachers and mentors, they're going to have to want to go that extra mile if you really want to get to know anybody, just like any relationship. You're going to get out what you're putting in. So,
yeah, it's building a support system for the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not just parent, like you said, not just parent, not just coach, not just teacher, but it's everybody. It's everybody being able to support this kid or this athlete to help give them every opportunity that you can for them to succeed.
Yes.
Because ultimately that's what we all want, right? For all of our kids, we want them to succeed.
Yes.
So, well, hey, this has been an amazing conversation, and I'm sure we'll have more in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any last words for this episode that you would have for the coaches and the parents out there listening?
Be okay with being uncomfortable. If you really want to have success with your kid, you're gonna have to get out of your comfort zone as well in order for them to reach their full potential. And continue to tap into Think Lit podcast.
Thanks, Vern. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Appreciate you being a guest, and I'm sure everybody listening to this will as well. And hopefully, over the coming episodes and months and all that, we're able to chat more and they get to know you even more.
No doubt. Appreciate you for having me, man.
Thanks, Vern.